That was pretty fun. Isn't it amazing how the universe works? Wasn't anyone like So I'm Kaisa, and I have the privilege to introduce Satri and Satyamai, Satsang, with them here today. And I would like to do that by sharing a little bit of my experience of being with Satri for a few years. And when I felt into that opportunity, what came to me first was a quote, not from the Gita that Satri usually quotes from, but from the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, where Jesus, it consists of sayings of Jesus, and this saying, Jesus says, "Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me. I will become like him, and what's hidden will be revealed." And that's my experience of being with Satri, is that any true realized being you're with, you have that opportunity. It's not a mental thing, it's something that transforms everything that you are. And the beginning for me was that I was in a place in my life where I was more stable mentally and emotionally, but there were things starting to happen in my practice that I couldn't understand. And I felt that there was something more that wanted to come, and I had no one to ask. And it arose in me that I need someone to help me. So that had occurred. So there was a recognition of the need for that. Not long after, I watched an interview on Buddha at the Gas Pump with Satri. And it was the strangest experience because he was talking so fast. And he was like using words I didn't understand, so I didn't really follow. But something happened inside of my body. I started to feel currents of energy. And actually they continued the whole night afterwards. And there was one thing that was clear to me. He can help me. I need to talk to him. And it was a bodily experience. It did not come from, it came from the body. And when we spoke, because during those times, this was like 2016, you could have a private Skype call with Satri. And when we met, I actually felt, I had that experience of him merging with my being or feeling into who I was in my true essence, really taking me in. And also me starting to get a sense of what he truly is. And what happened then was a burning longing to, maybe I could say today, I didn't know then, but to become what he is, to merge with him and to fully be one with him and what he has come to. And I feel that it's a depth of that longing that happened then that made it possible for me to endure what was next. Because things, immediately after that call, things started to come up. And it was, my stable life was just goodbye. It was so much content coming up and difficulties with family, friends, partner, you name it. But it was like the knowing was rooted so deep this time in my body that I just knew how to stay with it. And even today, if I'm provoked or I feel like I'm in a difficult position with Satri, I never doubt in my body. It's only like difficulties on other levels. But here there is a knowing that this is my path and this is the truth. And I stay with this because this is going to reveal what's hidden. And it's not only the difficulties that were revealed, because then it's like an opening. This is my feeling of the path. It's like a relaxation of who I am, becoming more and more from a clenched fist towards something that's open. So it's like, it's not only difficulties that gets revealed, it's also like aliveness and connection and the freedom to be, and the possibility to stand here and be connected to the truth of what we are sharing here, and the possibility of satsang, and us all coming to a greater truth together. So welcome.
So that was wonderful, Kaisa. We danced with each other as she was talking. A complete demonstration of what is the nature of this work. I really don't know if there's anything more that needs to be explained. It's really a matter of finding it out for yourself. I mean, that's really it. So I am Satri.
I know, what I could say
Okay.
is to those people who are new to being in this room that the majority of the people here today are students, which is why there was so much laughter when she spoke. Because we've all been through the same experience.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, okay, now you can finish.
Thank you, Annie. So I just was about to introduce you, but you did it yourself.
No, you can
have
introduce
anything
me.
more
I want to hear
sell?
what you're going to tell people. You didn't introduce me.
I said, this is Satchimai. Satchimai.
And who is Satchimai?
And who is Satchimai? I was going to leave that to you. They're discovering already. But
Well, no, I'll let you say it tonight.
all right. Satchimai and I were married in, I think it was 1984 or 5. And I had my awakening in 1998, and we've been together 13 years. It was a disaster for her, and it was me getting catapulted into a new reality for me. So she got the kind of the short stick of the deal. She drew the short straw. And for many years, from 1998 till just about 2013, we were in a collaboration, but not really a relationship. And then in 2014, I recognized that the real opportunity was for her to come and sit next to me. And that I knew that it was going to be also taking her fingers off of the controls of New Dharma enough so that she could travel. So I tricked her by saying, okay, we can travel to anywhere you want to travel.
Right, and I'm holding him to that. You're never getting off the hook. You shouldn't have said that.
And there's been just a case of just a continuous evolution for me as how to bring this consciousness into relationship to a piece of a structure from my past that keeps reoccurring in our day-to-day life. Allows me to keep coming into greater integrity with my responsibility for how the relationship is showing up. And what it is doing is teaching me, as a process I'm continually doing, of the fact that despite the realization, the manifestation of it into the creation is endless. What is still dark, what is still resistant, what still is embedded, what's still part of the design of our human embodiment is way beyond just the content I carry or the content Satchimai carry.
So let me add. First of all, we didn't plan the outfits, just so you're clear. That never happens. I was like, what? You're wearing? Anyway, we're not that close. But seriously, for those of you who have left a partner or a family member or someone at home who, when you had your awakening, stood by and went, what happened to my husband, my wife, my best friend, my, fill in the blank. It's a process for that person also. They are going through their own spiritual awakening. It just looks nothing like yours, most likely. And all I can say is, you actually did it perfectly. I'm not sure everybody could do it this way. is he pretty much left me to my own devices. Like, okay, you stay behind, you take care of the household, you raise the, the daughter, and you make the money. I'm going off to India for 6 years with my teacher. So that was my process. And I'm glad he did it that way. It would be much better than trying to coddle me, like trying to make it okay with me, because I would never be sitting here today if you had done it that way. And I like to fight the battle, so I was willing to, get up there and do what I needed to do. And our teacher, who lives on the other side of the mountain near Tiruvannamalai village, we just saw him last week, and he came to me, and he took my hands, and he said, I am so happy that you have become what I saw was the promise of who you would be with Satsang. So it was all worth it, and I would do it again, even though it was not that easy. It was hard, it was difficult, it was dejection, it was meeting content, it was feeling lonely and learning how to be by myself. And then it was making more money than he ever did, which was the best part. And, and then it's the opportunity to be here in the room with everyone. And that's probably the most special piece of it, of all of this, is the people that I get to come into contact with. I would have never met most of you ever. And thank you for being here. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you. And thank you. Okay.
So Kaisa brought up a really important point, that we really have to be ready. We have to already have something of what it is that is seeking to come into existence in us. We already have to have met in some way, even if it's hidden from our surface personality, a quality of ourself that makes life no longer worth living the way it is, or if it is, it's a kind of a quiet desperation without knowing how to bring that quality in yourself forward until you meet someone who can reflect that quality for you, who can meet it, who can see it. And then a catalytic event happens. A catalyst is something that's a tiny particle that affects a whole system. So the teacher's force is a small particle that sets in motion a process that is inherently natural. It's inherently in the design of human bodies. It's in the design of the quality of our self-awareness and the limitation of our embodiment. It is a quality of that essential principle we call me, but without any story or content or history. It's our self-awareness, but without a fixed position or identity. Is the quality of that I amness that we are. But we'd only know it through the filters of our mind, the filters of our emotions, the filters of our senses and our bodies and our life experiences. So we don't have access to it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't mean each of us don't have a soul. And isn't it also true every soul has a destiny? And what in any one life, what that destiny may be, is both our own capacity to come into existence and meet the challenges of life sufficiently, and the opportunities of our circumstances where we might meet those who can open or awaken or show us how to bring our soul into our lives. So we all have this soul. You all have the thing that is demonstrating. You all have this thing that I'm demonstrating. But has it been able to come forward in you? That is really what is the spiritual path. We don't know there's a spiritual path until that quality in us comes enough to the surface that we wake up. We wake up and realize that there's something more to you and to the world than you knew before. You wake up and you start getting real. You start becoming real. You just drop the conditioning of conforming and getting along You lose patience with the adaptations that we do as human beings to fit in, to be safe. And we're struggling to come to a quality of freedom, of aliveness, of immediacy. That's where we're going. I mean, we may have known it for moments in our childhood. Some of us never had it in our childhood. I know I did. I know I had a lot of joy when I was young. I remember joyfulness, being in existence, being the absolute delight of life. My first memory of that was walking down the back stairs of our 2-story house into the backyard in my diapers. And I couldn't hang on to the upper rail. I had to hang on the intermediary rail. As I went down precariously each step, I was about 2.5. And I went in and I came down to the first landing and I looked over this yard, which later I knew was not impressive at all. But in that consciousness, it was like a garden. It was like a wonderland. It was like an opportunity to, on my own, discover existence. And I remember seeing these white flowers and yellow flowers on a fence, and the beauty of it just drew me to it, and I started eating them. They were honeysuckles, so that was actually getting the payoff, because each one was delicious. But I remember the immediacy and the freedom and the quality of my soul being alive at that moment, that I had made it, that I had on the planet. And there was something of these early impressions that stayed with me all my life. Now, for many of us, perhaps that hasn't happened, or if it has, it's gotten lost in the obscurity of the trauma and the conditioning and the programming we all have to go through to conform, to fit in, to get what we need, to avoid what we don't want, all those strategies. So these become content that prevents us from having access to that innate capacity of ourselves. That's why when we awaken, we discover the capacity of that freedom, of that immediacy, of that new possibility for being that we had forgotten or didn't even know was there. The more we are able to access that part of ourselves, the more that when someone comes forward in your circumstances that carries something of that in them more fully expressed, you respond to that automatically, like a plant to the sun when it rises in the morning. It's just an automatic response. You drink from that light. You drink from that warmth. You drink from that quality of reality that is more real than you've known before. This is really the fundamentals of the spiritual path. It's like a seed planted in the ground, unknowingly sends down roots and sends up a shoot. And it has to traverse through some distance, this shoot. It doesn't know what up is, just like the roots don't know what down is. They just do it. Well, this is that very same, similar DNA, genetic, programmed quality within us. That there is this grounding ourselves as a person and this reaching for something greater. And as we struggle to come up out of the soil of our human embodiment and our conditioning and our programming and trying to fit in and trying to be like our crazy parents, not knowing that was a bad idea, we make it through that distance and pop out of the soil into the air, into the sun, into the veritability of existence outside of the darkness and the familiar, moist, dim obscurity of what you were before. So once you've awakened, something starts happening. The shoot starts growing leaves, right? It starts at some point producing its blossoms, whatever that may be, branches perhaps. And so it grows automatically, depending upon the sun, the moisture, the weather, the climate, opportunity, the circumstances. Now, the plants had self-awareness. Well, one that grew up in a circumstance where it's a desert, or it only rains a few inches a year, then it's going to be a stunted shoot. So you've awakened, but you don't know the full possibility of what that awakening could be. You'd have to relocate yourself. Well, being human beings, we're not so rooted into one spot. So we have much more opportunities for exposure to different environments and different climates that can nurture that unfolding. And one of those environments is with a spiritual teacher. I didn't know this. I was interested in Asian teaching. I was interested in my brother because, like, I felt something in my body. And it also became a recognition that at the age of 19, I thought I knew everything I needed to know, and I got really clear that I didn't know jack shit. And in that moment of awakening, I became very humble, and I was able to recognize the structures that I was locked up into in such a way that it brought forward in me a determination to come out of those structures. I was in addiction at that point, and anger and rebellion. So Meher Baba became kind of a symbol of a better me. Not a psychological better me, but a more true me, a more integrative me, a more one that wasn't constantly trying to protect himself or have it his way. It was one that was more willing to grow into the opportunity of life. And that is what happened. But after 5 years or so, it quieted and faded away, and I went into my worldly life. And for 25 years, I became involved in the world. I married Satsang. I had 2 other wives. I had a child and 4.
Before me.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have 3 wives at the same time. Not like some teachers. I just think that'd be a lot of work. I had a little wisdom after 50 years living as a human being. So when that time around my awakening, I was a busy architect. I was involved in alternative energy. I'd invested in a solar energy company in Nevada. We were both activists. I was politically activist. I helped pass the net metering law in the state of Nevada working with the Union of Concerned Scientists. So I was very vigorous in the outer world. I did not have any need for spirituality. There was no seeking. I felt I had been there, done that. I felt I was actualized. I felt I had come to the place of my own person in a way where there was a harmony between the person of me and the being of me. Little would I know that the universe was going to split open, and it was going to come in and wake me up, ready or not. And that happened late one night, January 4th, 1998. And I was thrust into a state of consciousness I had no idea existed. It was so vivid, so immediate, so direct, so unlike anything I had ever known as a human being or in all my alternative experimentations with drugs. It was of a complete different reality, but there was this absolute total recognition, like Kaisa said, in my whole body, that this was a truth, that this was the truth, that this was what I was unknowingly seeking my whole life, that this was the reason I was alive. And I knew that whatever caused this, because it wasn't me, I didn't know of any teacher or anything, that it was purposeful. It had an intelligence and had chosen me. Because even after the experience happened, and I was perfectly happy with having that one experience, it kept happening. It wouldn't let me go. And after a while, it became so convincing that I recognized, I don't know what this shit's going on. I don't know what the rules are. I don't know who's in charge. I don't know anything, and again, recognizing I don't know shit, and how do I align myself with this extraordinary unfolding? Excuse me, I'm still recovering from something. And that took me on a journey. It took me on a journey. I didn't leave Satsang. It took me away. I had nothing behind me anymore. I had no idea what the future was. When I came here to India, I was perfectly fine to be just here with the person I recognized that was a comparable to what Kaisha is in our relationship. It was a recognition in my teacher of a quality in myself that had not yet come into existence. And he educated me. He taught me the Bhagavad Gita. He revealed to me the secrets of the Vedic tradition. He showed me the different ways of understanding what was happening already, like a plant unfolding, not knowing, well, what's this thing? Oh, that's a leaf. What's this thing? Oh, that's a bud. How come it's so uncomfortable? That's because you have to be uncomfortable for it to blossom. So it became, I got information. I got a fundamental, you could write in a children's book the stages of the spiritual journey. Once you take out all the mysticism and magic and all the other things that our human imagination likes to add to it, it's really a simple unfolding of our very capacity to come into existence, to love, to be alive, to experience, to know. Because the entire universe is showing up to each of us. It's showing up as you. You can only know that each of us have our own universe. And that's actually true, because we can only experience the reality through the filters of our individuality. Clearing out our filters allows us to move in relationship with the extraordinary miracle existence is. And the extraordinary miracle we are to know that. So whatever happens, the universe is using me. It was her or his idea. Bring me up and have me do this and get enough information. And then I came back to the United States and started teaching. In 2009, Satsang and I organized a nonprofit, New Dharma. And we used that as a structure for me to bring this to the world. It was my recognition. Right now on the planet, there's 7.6 billion people. 10% of them are awakened, maybe 15%. And most of them don't know it. A few million may. Most of them don't know it. Nor do they know what to do with it. Because they're in situations where that opportunity isn't available, where that possibility isn't available. The demand of their family, the demand of their work, the demand of the conflict in the world that's around them, the demand of their own impoverished physical condition can allow them to grow into that possibility. That recognition, I call it, is a state of dejection. You've waken up to the truth of you. You know it somewhere, but it can't come into existence in your own experience. And there is this cry of the soul, trapped in the cage of the programming and conditioning and the circumstances that we were brought into. This cry is in the collective consciousness. And I've come to the place where I came on the journey to the place where I could feel that cry. And so I believe this cry is why we do this, in response to expanding and creating the opportunity for these seeds that have come to the surface to blossom. So in this way, I'm like a farmer. I water the garden. I pull the weeds. I let you grow. I protect you until you're strong enough to stand alone. And then you do your own weeding and watering. Because it's ultimately to get your own 2 feet and no longer be rooted to any one condition or way of being. So that's the work we do. We travel all over the world. We don't do a lot of advertising. We have everybody's come has come like Kaisha. It's usually they're pulled by one way or another. They hear about us one way or another. Friends or something they watched on YouTube or heard about or saw a poster. It took them 2 years, but they showed up one of the satsangs. You know, it's just the way it kind of works. It's not me. It wasn't me who awakened me, and it's not me that's having this. The divine in you is doing the same divine that I am is doing this. It's what's living you. It's what's been living you all along. If you can learn to listen to it and trust that, then you'll know that the universe is only bringing you exactly what you need. And sometimes it may not look like what you want. A lot of time, it doesn't look like what you want. And that's part of the only part of you that could know not to be fooled by that reaction is the part of you that is the soul. And that gives you the sense of faith or determination to be able to not be fooled by this one looks really comfortable and easy and happy, and this one looks very challenging and uncomfortable, to know which one to choose. Mm-hmm. Oh, there you have it. So this part, next part, you have anything to throw into the mix?
No, you did.
So
I was like, okay, I'm signing up.
Yeah, it's not enrollment because
I know.
what you're signing up for is the end of you as you've known yourself.
I signed up for that one a long time ago.
So we don't offer any false enticements here. It's hard enough rather than have false expectations. It's best to have low expectations. And if you respond even when we talk about the low expectations, then you're ready. Maybe.
Well, so at this point, we invite people to come up into the seat and engage in a conversation with Satri. It can be anything you'd like to speak about. You could even talk about what it was like to first find him, when you first found him. So,
or talk about your first awakening, or talk about how it's been unfolding, or perhaps you're in a struggle with which way to go or what to do about it. Especially for those of you who are here for the first time. By the way, how many are here for the first time? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, just three of you. So if you feel brave enough for it, they're in the back.
this is Martin. It's Martin, right? Yes.
All right.
Martin. He's from Czechoslovakia. He's from the
Yeah. You don't sit
it's
on it, you
already
hold
on.
it.
So, hello, I'm Martin.
Very good. Welcome.
And my first time meeting you was 2 days ago.
Right.
Huh. Oh, you came to the satsang?
I came here.
Ah,
Yes, he came to public talk here.
okay.
And so I've been also on the path for some years, which started more like with the cleansing, which you also implement very nicely. And then now, after some break, it's the more like about the awareness, consciousness. And so when I hear you talk, and when I'm somehow experiencing you, everything makes sense. Everything falls into certain simple logic.
Yeah.
And I would even dare to say, like, I feel the place you're speaking from.
Perfect. That's exactly what you're experiencing. There is really only one path and one truth, and it's very simple, and it's very immediately recognized in you when someone picks a particular path. The path without content, the path that is the natural unfolding of the possibility of what we are, without rules or... It's as if these are your words, if you had been able to find those words. So all I'm saying is what you already know, and all I'm showing is what you already are. It's that simple. So therefore, it's a process of discovering and learning how to collaborate with that process. Because it's more than just in the awareness. Mark, for you, Martin, what's for you is your awareness is the first that opened. But your heart and your body also wants to open. But it's through the awareness that this nurturance, this receiving, can come into the heart and to your body. And then it can take root. Because it's like from the top down with the awareness. It has to come through this higher part of us, and then it has to be grounded in our lived life. So, and that, I believe, is why there's always a certain dissatisfaction with just the path of expanding awareness. Because without the grounding, you leave behind the human, the very vessel that allowed you to awaken, and the world, which is here for your enjoyment when you do. So it's this integration and deepening and strengthening and making more real the quality of what you now know fully in your awareness. The awareness is helpful because it lets you recognize what is opposed to the process of bringing it in more deeply. You can train yourself through the awareness to stay with something that your nature would otherwise run from or hide from, when that something is exactly what's showing up and needs to be met. How to surrender to the challenges of life and move into the right relationship with whatever is the existing content of your circumstances, of your relationships, of your strivings and your way of supporting yourself in the world. These become the arena in which you can discover what's still in the way of this integration, this grounding. So I'm glad. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was somehow pondering whether I will come up today or not. And there was like many possible things I could say, but just want to drop all that, and I wonder what can happen, in these few minutes we have.
Well, that's already happened. And part of it has to do with the nature of your purpose. You came to India with a purpose, or I would say an intent. You don't exactly know what you're looking for, but you have an intent to try to find it. It brought you to Tiru, and it brought you to have a sense of what it is you're looking for, and that brought you to here. And this is mobilizing you because what's happening is consistent with your purpose. So then really the question is, well, how can I further this in my life? How can I make this more real? That should be the question. How to live. How to make this part of my lived life. So I recommend with people some very simple things once they have received the connection where it's impacting them. One is to meditate. Take up a practice of meditating twice a day for 45 minutes, in the morning and in the evening. Why meditate for 45 minutes? Because in 22 and a half minutes, you finally get to the place that's approximating meditation. If you stop meditating there, then you start from scratch the next time you meditate. But if you go another 22 and a half minutes, you get a little credit in the bank. So that when you sit for meditation next time, you go a little deeper. You get a little truer. You get more still, more centered, more present. And this is therefore becomes a regular part of your everyday life, because the rest of your life is about work, relationships, obligations, plans, future, past. So you just take out an hour and a half in your day for this. The second thing is go onto the website, satri.org, and begin watching my talks, especially on the Bhagavad Gita. I have a whole series, they're all free. And or the Mother Book, whichever one appeals to you. Bhagavad Gita is this little blue book that I like to say is the Reader's Digest version of the Vedas. but it's a very clear and simple tale. And my revelations of what this means and how it's relevant really talks about every single stage of the journey, from the beginning of the awakening to its fulfillment. So it's a helpful frame, scaffolding, to give you a sense of where this goes. Because it's not where it goes with just me, it's where it goes to anyone, any path that's pointing to the highest possibility that we are. So all of this becomes, in our consciousness, a way of beginning to get a sense of where we're headed, a map. And then participate wherever you can, in whatever way you can. For example, we'll have a Sat weekend next week where we'll sit silent for 2 days, which we invite some people from the public to participate. And we sit for 2 hours, 3 times in the day. And there's a talk at the beginning, a talk in the middle, and a completion at the end. And the following, that will be on the weekend, it will be on a Wednesday, which is an all-day intensive. That means you're engaged in whatever has got started in the silent weekend. And those are available to the public. So there's the other thing that could be done. I don't know how long, I don't know your circumstances, I don't know anything, I don't need to know anything. You have to know that. And to see what you can do. But there's how you can test in your own experience the validity of what you're already experiencing.
So may I a little specify maybe where I'm at right now, because I'm not new to by a master. I follow a master right now.
Okay.
And though I find your speaking and your expressions like quite in line.
They should be. Yeah.
Not necessarily like maybe the words, the expressions can be the approach, the angular view quite differs between the masters.
Good.
Right? But as somebody made the analogy of a diamond with different facets, like these two facets look quite close to each other.
Yeah, yes. Well, you're the one who can see the sameness. Ultimately, when you come to a certain state, all paths, you recognize all the validity of all paths. But so then, this time, may it empower you getting the greatest value that you are currently getting from your teacher. And may it continue to enrichen, because it always, enrichen is to add to what we have already know, what is already happening for you.
Yeah, quite exactly. That's how I feel. It's get some inspiration from another channel, so another opportunities.
Got it.
And
right.
So just to little specify where I'm right now I am, like in terms of the path. It's been quite intense last 2 years, and there's been on the way there will be several recognitions, or I would say even awakenings, but they were temporary. This part, the person, the identity, the false identity.
There's still parts still asleep.
Yeah, which keeps pulling something back to the old shoes, to the old patterns.
That's exactly how it works. Awakening, back to sleep. Awakening, back to sleep. It takes a while to establish the awakening because the habit of sleep is too convincing. Yeah. So, I mean, it's basically a matter of accumulating consciousness, as if consciousness was a substance and your body is a vessel. And the more awakened moments you have, the more it starts awakening your body's capacity to awaken. But it's the body that gives the stability to the awakening, not just the awareness. It has to become embodied. What does that look like? Well, at first, it's going to be transcendence, to know the freedom, to know the bigger expansion of the greater knowingness. But ultimately, to go to the full place, it has to come back into the body and be a capacity to come into a felt, direct relationship with what in you is still not able to awaken. And in that process, you start transforming. Now, if your transcendence is high enough, it'll bring a force that will start literally transforming the electromagnetic field of your body. It'll literally start changing the way the genome works, the way the body works, where the organs work. It'll all be set into a transmutation process by which more and more of the body becomes the means by which you can recognize and know the truth of the reality that you are and of what is arising in any one moment. So it accumulates. Each piece, even if you forget it or it gets covered, you never lose it. Truth will always come and grow. But the feeling may be that it comes and goes. But it's only because the untruth, the veiling, keeps preventing us from accessing it. But in fact, every awakening is in its own capacity converting the unawakened into the awakened. It is a slow transmutation process that goes on through the course of your entire life that makes your body, your whole system, a means by which you can know the divine reality that you are and the purpose of you awakening.
That's how it feels has been happening.
Yes.
Like this sort of oscillation
Yeah.
became like more and more subtle and more quicker.
Yes. Right.
Where
So it's a process where you ascend and then you lose it. But it seems you lose it, but actually you're descending into the part that doesn't know it yet. So you get overtaken by the old nature. But while you're in there, in the valleys, you that are actually undoing the convincing reality of those dimmer parts of yourself. And then the next time you go to a higher, more established, accessible awakening than you were before. And then of course that'll take you to the next level of darkness. And this whole cycle of being able to meet that light, which then has to meet the darkness in order to become more light. That is the food of your enlightenment. How can you know your enlightenment is through meeting your darkness? It's just because all there is light. It's only the obscurity, it's only the apparent untruth that prevents us from knowing that it's all light. So, all light, all love, all truth, however you want to language it. So the process is always trying to make room for what is already there by digging out the dirt. I like to use the analogy, when I was a kid, my favorite activity was digging big holes in our backyard. And one thing I noticed, that a hole didn't exist, you dug the dirt out of the way. So when you dug out the dirt, then you had a hole. And pretty soon our whole yard was holy. So it's like this on the spiritual path. It's just continue to know, to endure calmly, to prepare the soils for the unfolding of a reality that's all there, which in itself is holy, but it's in fact only holy in reference to the obscurity, to the not holy. If we hadn't suffered the price, if we haven't buried the unholy limitation, we could. All right.
yeah, even this is very clear already.
Yeah, that's you're open.
All the suffering is basically just a means to make us strive for something else.
It is the way, by eating the darkness, we transmute it, not just get rid of it, we transmute it into what it really is. It's only us that makes it look like darkness. It's only the limitation of our own ability to be in existence, our own ability to know our limited nature, what I call who we are, and to know our awakened nature, which is what I call what we are. The more we know what we are, the more we can see the who we are, the more all of this reveals itself. Yeah, it's so simple.
Yeah. So what happens after the oscillation stabilizes? Because that's like feels that somehow it's.
So I can see it's already stable. There's numbers of places where it becomes stable. And what happens is the journey is a series of ascensions and then horizontals, verticals and horizontals, verticals and horizontals. And what determines that is our capacity to let go of our old life and our capacity to integrate our new life. So if you don't have much capacity, then maybe relatively quickly you stabilize, and then you use that stabilization to make your life happier. And there's no motive to go higher. Some, or maybe for a while you go horizontal, and then you get restless, or know there's something more, and then you strive further. So the path is many foothills before there's actually a summit. And there is a summit. There is a summit. We don't actually get there, but we get pulled to it. Or you might say it's opposite. It's a pit. It's eventually we think we met all the shit we could meet, but then there's this whole other component that we hadn't even imagined was possible. I call it the void, where all our avoids lay hidden. So it is like this. And how far does it go? It depends on our aspiration. It depends on our longing. And that isn't up to us. It's the readiness of the soul. When this came with me, my soul was ready. Absolute readiness. And there was no stopping. It wasn't until I started reaching the very highest states, and then my teacher sent me away so that I could discover for myself what had come. And it's still unfolding. Because when you come out of the highest, then you're here to serve the world. And that keeps teaching you what the condition of man is. You keep meeting mankind, not just other people in the process. So it's an endless unfolding, and it's really developing the capacity to be useful for the world.
When you talk about these verticals and horizontals, what has been happening over the last 2 years, basically like whenever something like a vertical happened, instead of like plateauing off, the urge even intensified. So basically it's still
then this will have a
going on.
powerful impact on your ability to continue to your journey. Any touch of any realized being who's come to the place will strongly empower it if that's our aspiration. If our aspiration is to know ourselves as what I call the divine person, then we will not stop. I have quite a few people with me. They're not stopping. I have people who are moving through darkness that nobody ever thought they could ever move through. And they're still showing up, and therefore they're still coming into the fullness of what they are. I meet people who've heard about me or listened to my talks I've never met, nobody's ever met, and they show up one day and they've made all this tremendous progress. Why? Because it's when the universe finds a channel to come into the world, then the whole world benefits if they know it or not. And that's what's happening. So you will find your own readiness. Some people are here for this particular journey, for this particular work. The purpose of this work is, New Dharma, is to reestablish the Dharma that has been diffused and lost in the indulgence and the distortions and the distractions of modern age. And so it's a labor till I die. It's a bringing forward a way to live by which we can move along with our soul rather than our ego, but in a useful way where our ego becomes empowered and capable collaborator with our soul to help bring about or reestablish the natural order that was always there, the balance, the justice, the fairness that nature needs in order to be able to continue to fill her function for mankind.
You know, the funny thing is that there is even no way back, and the plateauing off for me just somehow cannot happen, because the more this awareness unfolds, the more I see how superficial and how vain the previous version of living was.
Okay, good. All right.
So it basically, this is what is like a positive feedback, that basically any reaching or any evolution basically fuels itself to evolve.
You're understanding it completely. You're on the correct path, whatever path that is. Thank you, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Srinivas?
I want I wanted to read out something. So, keeping in with the topic of the day, this is called as Totakastakam, an octave of verses. It was written by one of the main disciples of Sri Adi Shankara, called Totakacharya. There is a small legend which goes with this octave of verses. The story goes like, it's a small thing, I'll just finish off in 5 minutes. So the story goes like, there is a man called Anandagiri. He was selected by Adi Shankara. So he was the dullest of all the 4 disciples. So, but he loved his guru a lot. So he derived more pleasure in serving his guru rather than reading the scriptures. So it appeared like he was falling a little bit back. So so one day Adi Shankara was taking a class and one seat was unoccupied. So he said, "Where is Giri?" Then his disciples, other disciples said that he has gone to the river to wash your clothes. So Adi Shankara said, "I will wait for him to come back." And then the other disciple said, "Well, I think you should start the class because teaching Giri is as good as teaching a wall. He wouldn't understand anyway. So why don't you start the class?" Then Adi Shankara smiled and said, "No, I will wait for Giri." Then he closed his eyes and he gave the ultimate knowledge to Giri, who was on the river bank. So with his compassion, obviously. So Giri, on realizing the sudden change of consciousness, ran back to his guru. And when he saw him first time, 8 verses came out of his mouth in most difficult prosody of Sanskrit called Totaka. So it goes like this. So first one. O knower of nectarine ocean of scriptures, the expounder of knowledge of the great Upanishadic treasure, I meditate on your lotus feet in my heart. Be thou my refuge, O Master Satsri. It was Shankara, his guru, my guru is Satsri. So
A little editorial freedom there.
O ocean of compassion, save me. My heart is tormented by the misery of the ocean of births. I pray to you, give me the knowledge of truth. Be thou my refuge, O Master Satsri. By thy grace, the mankind has found true happiness. O thou who has noblest of intellect and skilled in knowledge of the self, enable me to experience the Atman. Be thou my refuge, O Master Satsri. Knowing that, 4th verse, knowing that thou art verily the Supreme Lord, there arises in my heart an overwhelming bliss. Lord, protect me from the vast ocean of delusion. Be thou my refuge, Master Satsri. The darshan of Brahman manifesting through your physical form can be had only after numerous virtuous deeds have been performed in many, many past lives. Protect me, an extremely helpless person. Be thou my refuge, O Master Satsri. O Master, for saving the world, the great ones assume various forms and wander in disguise. Of them all, thou shinest like the sun. Be thou my refuge, O Master Satsri. 7th verse. O best among gurus, the Lord, whose flag bears the emblem of the bull, meaning Lord Shiva. None of the wise is equal to thee, thou who art the treasure trove of truth and is compassionate to those who seek refuge in you. Be thou my refuge, Master Satsri. The last verse. Master, I am like an animal bound by a rope to a pole, restless, bereft of knowledge, bound down by my attachment to the pole. O teacher, bestow upon me thy grace quickly, That's so natural to you. Be thou my refuge, Master Satsang.
This path has existed for a long, long time. And one who can sing the song gains access to that path. And devotion and worship are one of the means. They're not so comfortable for us Westerners, but it resonates something in our shared humanity that we carry. The awe and the wonder of the spiritual path is unspeakable. And each soul has their own ways of languaging that or accessing that. I certainly didn't have the words, but I was moved as deeply as anything I later read in the Vedas about the opportunity of devotion as the most direct and immediate way to become that divine reality, because it feeds the body. Body becomes devotion. And then it becomes a stable vessel for the nature to expand into the possibility that it is. So any who have devotion are most assured, because like Kaisa shared, it was already there in her body. Her body was the reality. It was right there. As real as anything you can possibly know in this dimension. Okay, so now he does this and he evokes all this, and then I become this for him, and I'm useless. It's a problem with devotion. It doesn't do a very good discourse, but it is a demonstration of what it is, and then how the devotee can impact the teacher. So it's one of the miracles of this. It's not someone who's superior, rather you. And it's Ananda. It's nurturance. It feeds us. It brings us into existence. It gives us all the things our ego thought it wanted, but those were just shallow little versions of it. Yeah. That's all we're going to do tonight, I think. We just want to sit for a while,
Okay.
whatever time we've got left. Sitting and just receiving whatever has come for you. It's a little early, but it's just as well for me to stop talking and not test my my healing throat anymore. So we're going to sit for 20 minutes. Ooh. So if you're not comfortable with that, you could leave now. So nobody's obligated to do that. But if you are, all the secret of sitting is simply sitting, breathing, being here. If you can be aware of your breath, well, that's helpful. But it's what you're trying to find is some kind of quietude, some calmness, some stillness, a sense of peace, okayness, to be with yourself right here, right now, in this field that we're sharing, to feel whatever the energy you have access to, the love, the truth, the consciousness, the Satchitananda, whatever is accessible, just feel that, embody that, have that be yours, drink of it. I should warn you us lose control of our body, and don't be disturbed. We're still there, and we're just not in the body.
What does that mean? That sounds weird.
It's just, when they see it, they'll know it. What does that mean? Like you don't know. All right, let us begin. Hari Om Tat
Sat.
Sat.
Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat Shri. All glory to the Supreme. May truth manifest. Namaste.
Namaste.